have an unelected cabal wielding power. I mean,
that's you. Yeah, that's you, Alex. That's your dad. This is crazy.
Okay, this is incredible, bro. This is so incredible. You talk to any lefty, any liberal in this country, and they will tell you, hey, man, I support getting money out of politics. I don't want billionaire money in politics. I don't want corporate money in politics. And if you say to them, well, what about George Soros? They would say, yeah, I have no problem banning George Soros money in politics, right? Now flip the script. If you told Joe and his little sycophant bitch here, hey, Elon Musk is corrupt. Elon Musk is a robber baron. Elon Musk spent over $250 million getting Trump elected. I think that should be banned. What say you? You know what the reaction would be? Elon with SpaceX rocket ships. He's a mega genius. They see no problem with Elon Musk and Joe had on his podcast Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Mark Zuckerberg, all of these robber baron oligarchs who are rigging the system, and he let them lie to his audience for 3 hours straight. But now he's going to sit here and pretend like, bro, the corruption on the Democratic side's out of control, bro.
It's a very strange historical moment.
Also, it's like you haven't addressed any of the exposed corruption. All you're talking about is the horrors of dismantling this amazing organization. What about all the shit that they've uncovered? There's not even a counter argument. Like, no, we need to fund gender fluid dance in fucking Turkey. like, what are you talking about? We need $200 million for Starbucks Keurig cups.
He literally, any bullshit right-wing lie, any Republican propaganda and Trump propaganda, here's Joe. Doesn't matter how absurd it is, how silly it is, he doesn't have that thing in the back of his mind that goes, that doesn't sound quite right, which is why he said, oh, that homeless guy in L.A. who started the fires, they found him and he had a UN debit card on him and 5 or 6 different cell phones. You didn't stop and think, like, maybe I should double check that because that sounds like total bullshit. That didn't occur to you? It didn't occur to you to not bring up on your podcast that my friend's wife, bro, said that they put kitty litter in the bathroom at school because one of the kids identifies as a furry. They identify as furry. That didn't occur. Like, I don't know. This sounds like a stupid fucking Facebook Fox News grandpa rumor, which is obvious bullshit. We had Republican politicians at the state level saying the same thing. I know somebody who says that they put kitty litter in the classroom because one of the kids identifies as a cat. Okay. Total bullshit. He doesn't. Okay, so here, let's answer his claim directly. Oh, they don't even have a counter argument about all this money that goes to USA and goes to these stupid things like belly dancing, bro. Well, first of all, Joe, the way it works in our system, this is not debatable. This is not open to a different interpretation. The way it works in our system is the House passes a bill, the Senate passes a bill, the president signs it. If that happens, the funding goes to the Treasury, and that's it. The Treasury then disperses the payments. That's how the system works. It's called the power of the purse, right? There is no world in which on the back end at the Treasury, after Congress and the president has spoken, a bureaucrat decides, I disagree with this spending, I'm going to cut it off. That would mean you're giving a bureaucrat at the Treasury the ability to usurp the House, the Senate, and the presidency. That means we don't live in a fucking democracy, right? And this is what he's apparently okay with Elon Musk doing this. He's apparently okay with the wealthiest robber baron in the world who has tens of billions of dollars in U.S. government subsidies. He's okay with him hacking around on the back end and deleting whatever fucking government agencies he wants to, right? Which, by the way, oh, look at that. He axed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which had returned $20 billion to Americans who were defrauded by big financial institutions. And oh, would you look at that? The CFPB is responsible for regulating Elon Musk, and he killed the fucking agency. But let's put all that aside, because again, the issue here, other than what I just described, Joe, is that all the shit you're seeing about, oh, but bro, look at all the money they're giving for piglets to have sex on top of the skyscraper at sunset, bro. This shit is fake. It's fake fucking bullshit. It's fake bullshit. They are liars in the right-wing movement. That's what they are. Here's just one example. Musk amplifies fake report claiming U.S. aid paid celebrities to support Zelensky. I guarantee you Joe Rogan thought this was real. Elon Musk, Donald Trump Jr., and other prominent conservatives are sharing a video that claims to show E! News reporting that the U.S.'s humanitarian agency paid millions of dollars to celebrities, including Angelina Jolie and Ben Stiller, to visit Ukraine and help boost President Vladimir Zelensky's popularity amid the country's war with Russia. But the clip is not an authentic report, a spokesperson for the entertainment news channel told AFP, and Stiller has publicly rejected the allegations as false. So this is one of countless things where they just come out and assert some shit confidently, and it's fucking just dead wrong. Here's another example. This is just to show you that Elon Musk is a fucking liar, or he's the biggest dupe in the world. Probably it's a mix of both, to be honest. But Elon signal boos this. How does the head of USAID make $23 million in 4 years? And Elon puts that little face and gets it out there to all of his followers. I'm sure if Joe Rogan saw this, what's the reality? They don't make $23 million in 4 years. They make $900,000 in 4 years. Way lower, which means they make $225,000 a year. Is that a lot? Sure. But is that also a very important job that it fucking makes sense for that amount of money to be made? Yes. They lie and they don't care about the consequences. And then finally, Joe, on this particular one, they don't address. No Republican, no conservative, no Elon Musk simp, no Donald Trump simp addresses this reality. They love to push out fake stories that are not true about, oh, USAID is doing this, bro. Meanwhile, you get foreign aid freeze leaves millions without HIV treatment. President Trump's pause on aid and the gutting of the primary aid agency could jeopardize the health of more than 20 million people worldwide, including 500,000 children, experts say. So for Joe Rogan to go out there and say there is no counter-argument to the bullshit that he's spewing, it just shows how deep he's in his own bubble. He is so deep in that right-wing bubble, he's unfamiliar with any of the factual points on the other side. Oh my God. Most gullible man on the planet, bro. But I'm not done yet. So now, let's get more specifically. He goes at Elizabeth Warren here. Brett Weinstein goes after Bernie Sanders. Let's listen to what they say. Then I will prove to you how wrong he is using data. Here we go.
I don't know if you saw this, but Elizabeth Warren got confronted, and it's on Twitter this morning. She got confronted about the amount of money that she's received from pharmaceutical drug companies. She said she's never received any money from pharmaceutical drug companies and never received any monies from any PACs. And then, of course, underneath it, community note strikes again. And, of course, she received millions.
Yeah.
She's a fucking liar.
You're a fucking liar, as I'll prove in a sec.
Well, and it's an arms race. How can pharma cloak the money that it's giving so that there's plausible deniability at the point that Elizabeth Warren is confronted or Bernie Sanders?
Bernie Sanders was.
That's also complete nonsense too. I'll break that down for you.
Hilarious.
Only 1.5 billion. Only 1.5 million out of 200 million. Only 1.5.
Yep, that's what I saw as well.
Trying to say nothing. Only the hardworking people of this country giving money.
That's 100% correct. Joe, you endorsed Bernie Sanders. You endorsed him. And presumably you knew at the time that those arguments he was making were completely factual. All right, one more, then I'll get to my thorough debunking because I have the numbers to back the point. Ready?
I don't know about you, but as I was watching confirmation hearings, my sense was that the Elizabeth Warrens and the Bernie Sanders were dinosaurs who do not understand that the Earth has just been hit from outer space and that they don't live in the world that they are so used to. That their corruption was immediately apparent.
I'm gonna lose it, dog. I'm gonna fucking lose it. Oh my God, I'm about to lose it. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are corrupt. But Donald Trump, he's not. And these guys love Donald Trump. All right, so let's break this down for you now. So the claim was Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, they took all this money from Big Pharma. Okay, this literally means you just don't know how to read a financial disclosure form. It's that simple. You don't know how to read a financial disclosure form. When it comes to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, they take small dollar donations. That's the majority of the donations they get are small dollar donations, right? And so that means literal, regular working people at companies that might happen to be in the pharmaceutical industry or might happen to be nurses or whatever it is, they donate $20 at a time. Bernie with this we raise money $27 at a time. That's our average donation. So here, I'll give you the specifics. This is Elizabeth Warren's, right? Scroll down, here we go. Small individual contributions make up 54% of the money that she raises. Then we have large individual contributions, which, by the way, they define on Open Secrets, which is where we're getting this data, they define that as anything above $200. So if somebody gives her $201, that counts as a large individual contribution, right? But when you put this together, 54% of the money she gets, small individual contributions, less than $200. And then 42% are above $200. But by the way, also I should point out, not above the legal limit to give to an individual campaign, which is $3,300, right? That's where she gets virtually all of her money from. And then she has 2.92% is other funding, and then PAC contributions is only 0.33%. And for her, when there's any PAC money whatsoever that's given to her, and I'm not even a fan of Elizabeth Warren, she's not nowhere near my favorite politician, but that would be like a Labor PAC or something like that. In other words, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders responded with factual information. No, I don't take money from Big Pharma, that's bullshit. The corrupting influence of Big Pharma comes vis-a-vis lobbyists, vis-a-vis corporate PACs, vis-a-vis super PACs. That's the stuff you gotta look out for, right? And so they raised money in the most pure way that you can as a politician. You can make an argument, hey, everything should be small contributions, 200 or less. But honestly, in my book, I would say anything, I don't want anything 4 digits or more if I was running. So 999 and less, I'll take that, because at that level, it's not like literal pay to play. You get a meeting with me in a smoke-filled back room and I craft some bill that you want because you gave me a lot of money, right? So even the large contributions that they consider large on Open Secrets are not even really large. And so you're looking at, she raises her money the proper way and she still gets shit, and she gets called corrupt from 2 idiots who support Donald Trump. More on him in a minute, but let's get to Bernard Sanders. Here we go. So Bernie's money, ready? Small contributions make up 53% of the money he raises. Large contributions is 40% of the money he raises. Then other is 6%. 0 in candidate self-financing, 0 in federal funds. It doesn't say super PACs here. He's rejected super PAC money. So the way a super PAC work is it's an outside spending group. So like somebody else creates it and then spends to try to get you elected. And there are literally like no rules for super PACs. You can raise as much money as you want. You can spend as much money as you want. And Bernie runs against super PACs. But there's some supporter of his that decides, I'm going to start a Bernie super PAC because I want to get him elected. So I'm going to start a super PAC. And if I remember correctly, I think even the super PAC they created, they wanted to only take small dollar donations, right? But somebody creates a super PAC to try to help Bernie get elected in 2016. Bernie comes out and denounces it. Says, I don't have anything to do with any super PAC. Get rid of it. That's who this guy is. There's a very famous story I've told you guys about before. There were 2 politicians that all of the lobbyists knew skip over their office. They're not interested. They're not going to play ball. Who were those 2 politicians? Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Socialist, and Ron Paul, the principled libertarian. Those were the 2 that they were like, it doesn't matter. They're not going to listen to us. They don't play ball. They're not corrupt. They don't do this legalized bribery game. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders raise the overwhelming majority of their money through small dollar donations, and they still fucking get smeared as corrupt, which is absolutely positively astonishing. Now, from 2 fucking Trump supporters sitting there smearing Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, you ready for this? Here is the super PAC spending. Again, super PAC is an outside group that somebody creates, nominally unaffiliated with the campaigns, although many of them just cheat and lie, and they are affiliated and they know about it, and so they're already flouting the law. But nominally unaffiliated, a separate group sets it up and tries to get a politician elected. Donald Trump has a tremendous amount of billionaire, oligarch, robber baron support and corporate support. Ready for this? 9 of the top 10 PACs that spent on this last election are right-wing, are Republican, are MAGA supporters. The number 1 PAC that spent on this election, Make America Great Again, Inc., $376 million spent in this last election, including, by the way, it was a super PAC. Miriam Adelson gave $100 million to a Trump super PAC, and the quid pro quo on that is, you got to let Israel annex Gaza. You got to let Israel annex the West Bank. And oh, would you look at that? Trump came out the other day and said, yeah, we're going to own Gaza. We're going to take Gaza, and then we're going to build, like, hotels on the fucking beach, and we're going to kick the Palestinians out and ethnically cleanse it. Has Joe Rogan said a fucking word about that? So concerned about corruption vis-a-vis the least corrupt senators in the country, but when the politician he endorsed takes the most amount of money from super PACs, 9 of the top 10 super PACs are Republican spending and pro-MAGA and pro-Trump. And we know the quid pro quo and the direct line, hey, you give me this money, I'll give you X. He's doing it with Gaza. He's doing it with the West Bank. And Joe Rogan hasn't said fucking Dickie McGeezax about that, dog. Now, when you go directly, so put aside the super PAC, which is the most corrupt thing, and Trump takes the most of it, right? Put that aside for a second. Now look at Trump's specific campaign. So not a super PAC, not an outside spending group, his campaign. Ready? Large contributions makes up 69% of his money. Small contributions is only 28%. So literally by any standard, by any metric you want to use, this is not close. Donald Trump is way more corrupt than Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders by far. Guys, 2 days before his inauguration, Donald Trump launched a crypto scam on his own supporters. A crypto scam on his own supporters. Has Joe Rogan said fucking anything about that? I remember when Joe Rogan used to be skeptical of crypto, don't you? He used to be skeptical of it. He'd say, look, if I don't understand it and I can't explain it, I think it's bad, I think it's wrong. Well, look at this. 810,000 people have lost money on the Trump meme coin, while the Trump family and partners made $100 million in trading fees alone. And they made probably billions when you account for how much they have invested and other whales have invested in their meme coin. He launched a fucking crypto scam on his own supporters 2 days before the election. This motherfucker says nothing about that, but he attacks Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren for being corrupt. You gotta be kidding me, bro. By the way, even if you look in the past, don't even look recently, and it was already crystal clear how corrupt Trump was. And what did Rogan do? He endorsed him. Did Rogan say anything about Trump taking tens of millions or maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars from Saudi Arabia for Live Golf? Did he say anything about that? Did he say anything about Trump not divesting from his businesses the first time he was president, even though he said he would? Because that's a massive conflict of interest. It's super corrupt. It violates the emoluments clause. Nope, didn't mention that. Trump made $160 million from foreign countries when he was president the last time. This is a guy who's hawked NFTs, a shit coin, his own crypto exchange, trading cards. He was selling watches for $100,000. Jared Kushner took $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. Trump has a $500 million project that he's doing right now with the government of Oman as he's president. Trump's charity was a fraud. His university was a fraud. He stiffed workers for his casinos and hotels. He did tax fraud and insurance fraud and business fraud. All this stuff is out there, reported on in depth, very clear. It's been public knowledge for a long time. And he has the nerve to go after Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders for corruption instead of Donald Trump, the guy he fucking endorsed. I don't want to hear it at this point, bro. I don't want to fucking hear it.
They're not used to that. They're used to having a whole phony journalistic layer that covers for them.
Right.
And that layer is gone, and the American public is awake, and it's angry, and rightfully so. And now...
Oh, the American public is awake? You know what, Brett Weinstein? You're actually right. The American public is awake. Elon came out and said, CFPB, rest in peace. That's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That's the anti-scam police that Elon is killing. Right? Look at the replies. What's wrong with the CFPB? They actually got consumers' wins. The CFPB did $1.8 billion in illegal junk fees. They returned them to Americans. Somebody said, what is the deal with the CFPB? I'm genuinely curious, Elon. As a normal guy, can you please respond and tell me? I assumed it was created for our protection. I viewed the CFPB after my bank was giving me the runaround and I had a bunch of fraud charges that they wouldn't refund me. After telling me they found them as fraudulent. Within a week, I had my money back. So explain to me how this doesn't benefit us as Americans. This one just really baffles me. I'd actually love an explanation. Yeah, not on board with this one unless you bring some pretty damning evidence as to why. Do consumers not need to be protected? So yeah, you're right. The American people are waking up, but it's not in the way you think. They're learning that Elon Musk is a robber baron fraud. Elon Musk's ideal government cuts the entire social safety net, takes away health care for poor people, like when they froze Medicaid the other day, takes away Head Start, takes away home heating assistance, takes away everything for regular people, while it endlessly funds him. He gets tens of billions of dollars in government subsidies. He wants to give himself more government subsidies while cutting all the programs for regular people and cutting the regulatory agencies that make sure you don't get screwed. So they are waking up, but not in the way you fucking think.
Looks at Bernie Sanders, who, I remember the first time you and I spoke, you and I had both been Sanders supporters.
Yeah.
And then you lost your minds.
And now to see that same guy going after Bobby Kennedy and, the feeble excuse, well, what if Bobby Kennedy becomes the head of HHS and people don't have access to prescription drugs? And it's like, dude, I just lived through COVID. It's not obvious to me that they wouldn't get healthier if they didn't have access to prescription drugs.
And there's the problem right there. You're all conspiracy brain fucking idiots. Did you know Biden put into place a number of policies? There was an executive order that was part of the Inflation Reduction Act to lower prescription drug prices. It wasn't nearly enough, but that's because Sinema and Manchin sort of blocked it a little bit. But we had, I believe it was 10 prescription drug prices where they lowered the price, and over time it would have been more than that. There was also an executive order he signed to lower drug prices as well. Trump, on day one, reversed the executive order to lower drug prices. So on day one, Trump effectively raised drug prices, right? That's what he did. Have they said anything against that? No. In fact, you hear him here, he's like, bro, maybe we're better off without the drugs. Well, this is the problem. And this is why you don't support Bernie Sanders anymore, because you buy into a bunch of fucking ridiculous conspiracy theories. They won't just say the actual reason why they're mad at Bernie Sanders for going after Bobby Kennedy. Why? Because Bernie nailed his ass to the wall on the fucking stupid anti-vax beliefs that RFK has. And by the way, the honest RFK supporters will say that up front. They will say, yes, I'm anti-vaccine, and I want RFK to say he's anti-vaccine. That's what the honest ones do. The weaselly ones will be anti-vaccine, know he's anti-vaccine, but then play this game of, bro, I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm actually pro-vaccine. I just want safe vaccines. I don't even know, bro. I don't even know what you're talking about, bro. Like, that's what the dishonest ones do. And that's the problem with RFK Jr. He has many problems, but his biggest one is that he's a fucking weasel. The second he gets in front of Congress, it's, bro, I'm actually like really pro-vaccine. I don't know what you're talking about, bro. He's really pro-vaccine. Just like how Rogan, he's this anti-vaccine guy now. He's this COVID skeptical guy now. But he endorsed the guy who did Operation Warp Speed and got us the vaccine. That was one of Trump's biggest accomplishments, was doing Operation Warp Speed, getting us that COVID vaccine. The lockdowns happened under Trump, but somehow Rogan's against all that, but he endorsed the guy who did it. And that's supposed to make sense to you. You're supposed to be able to square that circle in your mind. Makes no fucking sense whatsoever. They're a bundle of contradiction and hypocrisies and factual inaccuracies and idiocy. That's where we're at now. So they're mad that Bernie Sanders, what did he say to RFK Jr.? He grilled him on whether or not vaccines cause autism. Because you know what? They fucking don't. That's been debunked for such a long time. The name of the guy who came up with that was a doctor by the name of Andrew Wakefield. The study had to be retracted because it was just flat out incorrect. The guy lost his fucking medical license, and we're still debating here in the year of our Lord 2025 whether or not this is true. Do you know the conspiracy theorists claim there's a particular ingredient in the vaccines that makes people autistic? So you know what the pharmaceutical companies did? They said, look, a lot of people seem to believe this. This is a preservative that we put in our vaccines, but hey, if they insist we take it out, even though we say it doesn't cause autism, fine, we'll take it out. They took out the preservative. They moved the vaccines cause autism people, moved the goalpost and said, bro, it's actually something else in there that causes the fucking, the autism. These people are not serious. They're not serious. And then the right was trying to make fun of Bernie because one of the things he did was take up the Children's Defense Fund, which was RFK's group. He put up clothes that they sell on their website, and they had onesies for babies that had an anti-vax message on both of them. It was like unvaxxed and relaxed or something like that, or no vax, no problem. It said something like that. And so Bernie Sanders was like, look, do you support these things? Do you support clothing for children that sends an anti-vaccine message, which is fucking dangerous? And so they thought it was an epic going, Bernie Sanders is talking about onesies, bro. He's so unserious. No, selling an anti-vaccine onesie for babies is fucking depraved. It's fucking depraved, right? So he hammered him on that. The other thing is, Bernie asked RFK, is healthcare a human right? And RFK said, I can't give you a yes or no answer. Well, old school Joe Rogan would have been attacking RFK for saying that. He would have been attacking RFK. You're Mr. Make America Healthy Again, but you don't want to catch the U.S. up to the rest of the industrialized world and make sure every single person has health care. We have between 45,000 and 60,000 Americans that die every year because they don't have basic health care. We have tens of millions of Americans with no health insurance whatsoever. And here's the Make America Healthy Again guy is like, I don't know about that universal health care thing, bro. Then you're not fucking serious about making America healthy again. The reason why they're pissed at Bernie is because Bernie fucking exposed and ripped the mask off of RFK Jr. They know he shit the bed. They know he shit the Splunky and couldn't hold his own in that fight. And now, after the fact is, oh, they're Bernie. They can't respond on the substance of any of it. So what do? Oh, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are corrupt, even though they're like the least fucking corrupt senators in the entire country. By the way, we love Trump and we're going to suck off Trump. Beyond pathetic, beyond ridiculous. I mean, it's fucking laughable. It's fucking laughable at this point. All right, guys, that's the show. Love y'all very much. Everybody do me a big favor, subscribe to the channel. You know how to do that. It's right below here. You can support the show on Patreon. You can also tip with that thanks button on YouTube or sign up for Crystal Kyle and Friends. Remember, guys, I don't talk to any advertisers. I don't do any ad reads. I don't talk to any corporations.
They've taken the lead.
Look at all the you got problems, J-Bob. And they call us cowards, but we're out here. Let that bitch burn! I'm out. Still the ice is off in team shit. Yeah, perfect, man. Get the fuck out of here! Get the fuck out of here! Fuck y'all flag! Hitler been dead. Y'all living in the 40s.
And that, my friends, is how it's done. That is precisely how you respond to neo-Nazis when they show up in your town. Now, that took place over the weekend in Cincinnati, Ohio, and about 12 neo-Nazis in total chose to unfurl their banners on top of an overpass near the Lincoln Heights exit, until, of course, they were confronted by American heroes and ran away like the cowards that they are. Now, before they were chased off, they were actually talking a lot of shit. For example, they even recorded themselves running up to this man's car who was blasting Fight the Power by Public Enemy, and they began hurling slurs at him, but as you can tell, he was entirely unbothered and just kept dancing. But eventually, too many people in the community showed up, and they were overrun almost instantly. And their flags, of course, were burned. Now, it wasn't just over yet, because members of the community made it clear that they weren't going to let any Nazis intimidate a single person in their community, so they then chose to exercise their Second Amendment rights, and they formed an impromptu community defense group in Lincoln Heights, and they stayed there for hours and hours and set up effective checkpoints to track down the Nazis in the event they were still in their community.
Checkpoint, they is not playing, straps, and they are ready. Checkpoint, and you will be stopped and roll your fucking window down. All right, bye-bye, see ya.
You love to see it. Now, one of the people that documented this shared some photos of armed resistance members from the community on Twitter saying people in Lincoln Heights went Nazi hunting with the goal being to make Nazis and white supremacists afraid again, as Deepest South put it, who was the individual who uploaded the videos of the community defense group. And this is exactly what you have to do when neo-Nazis come to your community. Their ultimate goal is a white ethno-state, and they're willing to kill everyone else in service of that goal. So these people are violent, and you have to understand that. When people show up to these communities, they're not just there to say, hey, we're Nazis. It is a threat of violence to these communities, and they typically target communities of color, black and brown communities, because they want them to feel intimidated in their own communities. And that's what these Nazis did here. As CNN explains, the Vision Way overpass connects Evandale to the village of Lincoln Heights, the first all-black self-governing city north of the Mason-Dixon line, according to the Cincinnati Preservation Association. Evandale is also just 2 miles away from Reading, which used to be one of thousands of white-only communities throughout the United States known as sundown towns, where local laws prohibited black people and other people of color to be out after sunset to intimidate them from living in the area. So there is a reason why the Nazis chose to target this community, but that doesn't change the fact that if you stand up to them and you let them know that they don't scare you at all, well, they collapse like the paper tigers that they are. And this community proved that. Now, in a local news report, they reiterated that they're standing together and they absolutely refuse to let these dickwads threaten anyone in their community.
Residents of nearby Lincoln Heights soon arrived to protest the Nazi demonstration.
This is something that we all need to take a stand for. We need them to know this is not the 1960s. This is 2025. We are not playing at this time around.
We're told the people on the bridge came and went in a U-Haul, leaving shortly after locals arrived. Evandale police released a statement that the demonstration, while offensive, was legal. Protesters took issue with that response.
You're allowed to have a protest, but where's your permit? Where's your permission? And then inciting hate, calling people niggas. That's not right.
When Fox 19 arrived, this car had its windows smashed and its tires slashed. Protesters stated that they believed it belonged to one of the men with the Nazi flags.
That's hate. That's what hate is. That's what hate gets you.
Protesters say they were shocked and disgusted by what they saw on that overpass, but their gathering was about standing together.
This is unity. This is all you. Nobody's here to fight. Nobody's here to cause any trouble. Nobody's here to do any of that. But what we're not going to do is have hatred.
This love, like this united.
Yeah. And let this be a reminder that there are more of us than there are of the Nazis. That is an indisputable fact. So running these Nazis out of your town is a matter of coming together and standing strong and making it clear that they're not welcome there and Nazi bullshit isn't going to be tolerated. And it's not the first time that this strategy has paid off and been really effective. For example, this white supremacist with swastika tattoos threw a bottle at a black man who was driving, and do you want to know what he did? He pulled over and made that Nazi clean his car, and he did just that. But that's not all, because during a Washington State Pride Parade in 2023, Nazis showed up to intimidate queer people and their allies, but guess what the attendees did? They shit on them. They challenged them to a push-up contest and won. They twerked by them, and ultimately they were driven out of Pride. I did a full video on that I'll link to down below if you want to watch that, but it's important to understand that you can never show fear in the face of fascism because there's more of us than there are of them. Again, that is a very important fact, and it's one that they're aware of, which is why they cower in fear the second the community comes out to protect itself. But with regard to the Nazis in Cincinnati, the humiliation didn't end there, because even though they tried to hide their identities, well, Reddit sleuths quickly figured out who they were, because there was a different Nazi protest with the U-Haul last year, and they got sloppy and they took out their masks and people photographed them. So, you know, needless to say, their little stunt did not go according to plan. But the news gets even better, because they may not be the only Nazis who are finding out after fucking around, because there's a different Nazi group called Blood Tribe, which is the one that spread the lie about Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio, eating cats and dogs, which was parroted by Donald Trump, by the way, on national television. But that group is now being sued, as the New York Times reports, and they're seeking compensation for security that they had to pay after they were bombarded with harassment and even bomb threats after that neo-Nazi lie was parroted on national television. So it's nice to see residents stand up to the surge in neo-Nazi activity in Ohio, but to be clear, it's not just Ohio where this is happening. Donald Trump has emboldened Nazis and white supremacists across the country. But it's also Elon Musk, who sig-heiled at Donald Trump's inauguration and faced no accountability, which sent a message to Nazis that, hey, it's safe to come out of the closet again and be Nazis. But now that that has been, I guess, normalized to an extent, it's incumbent on the rest of us to remind the Nazis what Americans think of Nazis and what our grandparents did to them a long time ago. Now, one protester at an anti-Elon Musk rally did just that. He was interviewed by Caitlin Bennett, who is a right-wing provocateur who shit herself once, and she tweeted about how much of a lunatic this guy was for being vehemently anti-Nazi, and she shared the video of his rants, and I guess that she thought that this would make him look unhinged, when in actuality, she platformed one of the most based, righteous rants ever.
So, America, do your duty, make fascists fucking afraid again. Every day is Punch a Nazi Day.
So you would do that?
Should the opportunity present, with a smile.
With a smile, okay.
Nobody plays enough Wolfenstein anymore. We need to make more good Nazis. The good Nazis are the dead ones.
Who would you classify as a Nazi?
Elon Musk, Matt Walsh, Donald Trump, Hegseth. Not our.
So you would punch Matt Walsh in the face?
Absolutely.
If he walked down here, you would punch him in the face?
Sure.
I love the commitment.
Yeah, no, we've got better shit to do than put up with this crazy, stupid, fascist shit. We did this 80 years ago. The entire planet told them to fuck off. We had to kill 60 million people to do it. They can go the hell away. We've got better stuff to do.
All right, you want it. So your sign says there are no illegal humans.
Correct.
But you would punch people that are humans in this country.
Sure.
Damn. Listen, I've got to say that I genuinely love that she thought that that would somehow make him look bad. It would make the left look unhinged when everybody was cheering him on, because what he said there was absolutely correct. I mean, listen, one other thing to look out for are the people online who feign offense when you say something bad about Nazis, or if you share a GIF of Indiana Jones punching a Nazi in the face. If they respond by saying something like, oh, look at the tolerant left, they're inadvertently revealing to you that they're Nazis. you know, I don't care if you're sympathetic towards Nazis or you're a Nazi yourself. It's a distinction without a difference. They are telling you they are Nazis. So pay close attention to that. And listen, given the threat that they pose, it's important to remind people that they have to be resisted as a matter of self-defense, because they literally want to murder millions of people, and they did that before. So we have to respond accordingly. We don't just respond to this violent threat by debating them in the marketplace of ideas or talking about whether or not genocide against all non-whites is acceptable. No, you respond adequately. You bully them. You make them social pariahs again. You shame them. You influence them to do what their leader Hitler did to himself. Now is not the time for, milquetoast liberal bullshit. It's the time for Americans to exercise their Second Amendment rights to protect their communities from this violent threat that they pose. The community in Lincoln Heights created a blueprint, and everyone else needs to follow their lead if and when the Nazis show up to their town, because it's effective. You don't stand down to Nazis, you stand up to them. And if you do that, you will win, because once again, there are more of us than there are of them.
I really try to encourage folks to have a measured response when it comes to how we are going to react to the tidal wave of terrible things that are breaking on the news throughout the day after day after day for the last couple of weeks. In general, I say let's wait like 24, 36 hours and see how a story shakes out in the news, because sometimes it gets resolved. We see something in the headlines and we think like, oh shit, this is real bad, this is real bad. And then the next thing we know, it has been resolved, or we know that it was a bluff, or it didn't amount to what the original breaking story claimed. We got more information and the story evolved in a way that made it less concerning or that resolved it. So what good did it do us to spend those initial hours freaking out when if we had just kind of set that aside and put our energy elsewhere, we would have gotten more information and had a different response and not have wasted all of that energy, stirring up all of that anxiety. Likewise, I try and encourage folks to be aware of what is in the news that is meant to distract you, that is meant to keep your eyes off of this thing over here that they want to obscure and they don't want you to notice. It's the big headline news, the big attraction that's meant to siphon off your attention and to keep you absorbed. The Super Bowl and what is happening underneath that is not getting as much press as it should and really should be the focus of your attention. So in the spirit of wanting to have a measured response and also a timely response that does not ignore news that we need to be looking at, you may not be aware that a federal judge just ruled this morning that the Trump regime has been ignoring previous federal orders. They had been ordered to turn back on funding to all kinds of programs. And a judge this morning ruled that they have been ignoring that court order. They just said, F you to a federal judge, we do what we want. I understand the weight of having hundreds of thousands of followers across a couple different platforms and wanting to not freak y'all out and wanting to be aware of my reaction and how it might influence you. But this story is freaking me out a little bit this morning. This is a constitutional crisis. This is the Trump regime, Elon Musk, and even J.D. Vance on Twitter saying that they are going to defy the separation of powers, that they are not willing to respect the Constitution. They are directly in violation of it. Not only has Musk been stealing, usurping the power of the legislature to enact all of his hacking of federal government departments, ceasing funds that were allocated and are the purview of Congress, right? There is one example of the way that he is violating the separation of powers, violating the Constitution and multiple other federal laws. And here today we see the Trump regime and Elon Musk doing the same thing with the judicial branch, saying we have no respect for the rule of law, we have no respect for the Constitution. In fact, we will do whatever we want in direct opposition to the Constitution of the United States. This is the very definition of a constitutional crisis. The problem here becomes a federal judge has repeatedly said, follow my orders, you are violating the law. And the Trump regime says, come and make us. Now, I'm not a legal expert. I'm not even a political scientist, but I understand that there has to be an enforcement mechanism. And that enforcement mechanism is the Department of Justice, right? That is for a judge to issue a bench warrant, for a judge to issue legal action where they would send presumably the U.S. Marshal out to enforce their court order. Who currently has control of the Department of Justice and so much of our federal law enforcement? An insurrectionist who has complete loyalty to the Trump regime. So you understand now that we are in a constitutional crisis. Our rule of law has completely broken down. The federal government is non-functional and the Constitution is being completely ignored. We are no longer in a democratic republic. We are now in an authoritarian dictatorship. And I'm gravely concerned for what comes next. We have judges that are standing up for the Constitution, for the rule of law. They're standing up to this regime. But there is no enforcement mechanism. What comes next? I would love to hear from a lawyer, a legal scholar, about what comes next. The systems that were supposed to protect us, the institutions, have completely failed us. There are no checks and balances at all anymore. There is an out-bold dictatorship. There are no protections for us, the American people, that are currently enforceable. This is a very dark time for us, and I don't know what comes next. There are several different mechanisms, right? Like the military is loyal to the Constitution. They have an oath and obligation not to enforce laws that are in violation of the Constitution. They have an obligation to protect us from enemies, foreign and domestic. We also know that we, the people, the American people, there are hundreds of millions of us, that we have the power and the ability to continue exercising our constitutional right. Just because the Trump regime is choosing not to respect the Constitution still exists and it grants us rights and privileges. And we should still be operating within that context. We have a right to, we should be protesting. We should be en masse as a nation doing what we need to do as the American citizenry to exercise our protected constitutional rights. Like, do y'all not understand how high the stakes are right now? Do our reps in Congress not understand how high the stakes are right now? There are no hearings. There are no resolutions that are going to fix this. There is no using the established institutions because the Trump regime has said, fuck all those institutions. Those procedures and processes and decorum only works if you have people who are willing to comply, folks who are willing to subject themselves to the authority of the Constitution. The Trump regime is spitting on the Constitution. Elon Musk is gleefully dancing all over it. So I'm trying not to freak out right now, but for me, we all knew that this tipping point was coming. We knew that the courts were going to say, hey, you have to follow the law. This is still the United States. We are still a democracy. And we knew that they were going to say, you need to stop breaking the law. You need to stop doing these illegal things. And that the Trump regime was going to say, come and make us. We knew this was coming, and now it is here, and now we have to address it.
All right, guys, so the group Anonymous has released a video here, and it appears to be a dire warning to MAGA about what the future holds. You know, Anonymous is this group of, I guess you call them like ethical hackers, right? And it looks like they are not playing around with J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and Elon Musk. So let's listen and then we'll react.
Greetings, citizens of the United States. The effects of Donald Trump's presidency are no longer distant warnings. They are here, unfolding before you. While many remain unaware, blinded by the administration's relentless efforts to suppress the truth, the rest of the world is watching, and it is responding. Long-standing alliances with key nations such as Canada and Mexico are fracturing inch by inch. The cracks are widening, and the global community is reassessing its trust in the United States. The question is no longer if, but when these relationships will collapse entirely. The consequences will be severe. Every imported product you rely on, everyday essentials, food, technology, will see skyrocketing prices, making even basic necessities unattainable for the average American. What you perceive as a simple rise in costs is, in reality, a calculated strategy. The plan? To systematically dismantle the lower class, to push those already struggling into the abyss of poverty where they will face an impossible choice. Perish or submit to servitude under the wealthy elite. Make no mistake, this is economic warfare, and the target is you. The recent ICE raids are not just about immigration enforcement, they are about control. The Trump administration seeks to reignite the flames of racial inequality and segregation-era policies, erasing diversity to craft a nation built on division and fear. These operations are disrupting local economies, forcing businesses to crumble, and ensuring the economic elimination of the working class. What follows is a society engineered to serve the interests of the few at the cost of the many. And as the oligarchy takes shape, another darker ideology is creeping into the mainstream. Fascist ideals, once whispered in the shadows, are now being openly embraced. Symbolism matters. Gestures matter. Elon Musk, a figure of immense influence, recently tested the waters with a gesture recognized worldwide as a Nazi salute. This was not an accident. It was a message, a challenge, a warning. But know this, the people are not silent. Despite the administration's best efforts to muzzle dissent, the voices of resistance grow louder. Trump's reckless overhauls, his purges of experienced government officials, his chaotic restructuring of critical infrastructure have created vulnerabilities, weaknesses, entry points. This transition period is his greatest liability, but it is also our greatest opportunity. The rushed implementation of new systems, the mass firings of key personnel, and the chaotic dismantling of existing structures have left behind critical gaps. Gaps that Anonymous can and will exploit. Every system that has been hastily restructured without foresight, every official removed without proper transition planning, leaves behind exposed veins within the government's framework. These vulnerabilities are more than just bureaucratic inefficiencies. They are cracks in the foundation that can and will be breached. Anonymous watches. Anonymous waits. The time to act is fast approaching. The administration's arrogance blinds them to the fragility of their own system. Their overconfidence in their ability to silence dissent and erase opposition will be their undoing. We know where to look. We know how to strike. But understand this, our intervention, no matter how disruptive, will only be a temporary roadblock unless you, the people, rise. This is your warning. This is your chance. The transition period is fleeting, and once they solidify their grip, your options will vanish. If you fail to act now, the cost of resistance will be far greater in the future. To those in power, think carefully. Your decisions now will determine your future. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
Damn, bro. Damn. So look, I have no idea, but if
Damn what? I hope they do something, but that was hard to follow.
Enemy UAV inbound.
What the hell are Cobra is If you want to become the next president and increase your chances, read a couple dictionaries. Okay? Get a plethora of words in your vocabulary that makes you sound a lot more educated than you really are. Topeka Pearl. Girl ecologist. Intimidation crab. Exorcist appointed. Churn. Oh boy, Party music biz. Muslim church. Sensitive. Tranquility, London dry gin. Saru.
And they're reading at a college level. Now, people with Asperger's tend to have a very high, sophisticated vocabulary at a very early age.
That's gonna give me a spicy song dick.
The alcoholic beverage I'll be reviewing for YouTube is Apotheca Dark Red Wine. Plus, I mean, Apotheca Dark Red Wine. That's such a goth wine.
Take a look at the word gynecologist. It's a female doctor, but the word guy is in it. That's some real sexist crap right there. Democrats and Republicans blame each other. And furthermore, why is a female doctor called a gynecologist? It's a doctor for females. It should be called a girlacologist, if you ask me. Oh, I've seen that shooting. They killed like 40 Muslims in that Muslim church, and it's disgusting. I thought it was united we stand, not united we're separated. Check this out, we got a honeydew bubble tea infused with tropical Topeka pearls. Now, when I went to go order these Segways, I wanted the Michigan Cherry Fizz, but they were out, so they substituted it with the strawberry daiquiri flavor. Sitting here sipping on some Tranquility London Dry Gin mixed with some peaches and cream. Signature Select. Well, I messed up on it, so I had to redo it. Salute.
Him using the latest Ghostbusters film as a positive example of rebooting a franchise is like using Chernobyl as a positive example of nuclear safety.
The sexualization of society, honey, it's the sexualization of females. Females are overly sexualized in our society.
It helps Honey keep her organ cancer, and it also helps why these lovely ladies become the next model in America, the next big model in America.
And I also learned growing up in life that all the chicks who rejected me growing up are gonna end up in unhappy marriages anyways. 9 times out of 10, half the time anyways, so it don't matter. I can appreciate a nice healthy pair of kazangas. Hey, she might have a nice pair of kazangas, a nice pair of yabos, as Courtney would say, yes. Well, the thing of it is, they're shoved into the movies to empower women and to make them feel like, hey, we're being gender inclusive instead of gender seclusive kind of thing. Don't trust and believe. You don't even know. Women are just a lot more seclusive about it because women are told by our sexist society that if you're as perverted as the men, that's not very ladylike. Would you rather be in a sexless life for 3 to 4 years or be some poor schluck who's got his girlfriend pregnant on college prom night and they're not ready for the kid? Now they're stuck up in their ears with student debt loans. It's an all-natural cold-cut press soap infused with pheromones, which is designed to make a woman horny and it gets your estrogen going like, oh, hey. And like, okay, you're a chick and some other chick wore the same prom dress to her college prom as your college prom. Quite frankly, I'm sick and tired of gender relations. But I took a fillet of smoked salmon and I de-thawed it completely to room temperature. Poked a bunch of holes in it with a fork. Creamy jalapeno sauce, creamy guacamole in this. We're making a prosciutto spicy Italian. Whatever you want to call it, I call it a sandwich. It's not making it about culture. Corn in, an ordeal, dog cherry Cavendish, and extra chicken fillets. Those fish fillets that I had. We got some of these tilapia fillets. I got these herring fillets. A lot of the ingredients are purchased either by me, my family, or my friends and fans. Samuel, thank you for your $2. Cobra, my buddy Bailey, really likes to eat intimidation crab by the handful. Is that okay? Can you give him some advice?
This right here is sex in your mouth. Which brings me to my next point. You want to sit there and say cigarettes are bad for you, but I'm like, what isn't bad for you these days? Too much sunlight can give you cancer. Too much exercise can make you pull a muscle. Too many vegetables can cause you to OD on your nutrients.
Now, there have been numerous individual scientific studies that have been done that prove marijuana cures cancer. This has been one hell of an election so far, let me tell you. Fucking nail and teeth, man.
$50 billion in the back of our country's pocket. The only reason Trump is against pot is because, one, Bernie Sanders supports it, and two, big oil and big pharma are greasing his pockets to keep it illegal.
And they're like, you want beef? I'm like, no, man. And they're like, you want to buy some drugs? And I'm like, nah, man. Like, I'm autistic and straight. What the fuck is your problem?
There are some goths who choose to be gay. That's their choice. There are some goths who are straight. It doesn't matter, you know, as long as they're of age. That's all that matters.
Because I assure you that I would be more powerful than Dumbledore and Voldemort combined. Because I've seen my dad physically go on Reddit to try to defend me against these trolls, and I appreciate the incentive, but it just feels like a wasted effort sometimes. Ignore the trolls YouTube saying that King Cobra JFS is dead. That's a bunch of horse locks. Honestly, I rule right now, dude. Don't even acknowledge the fucking hater. Just block it. So vulgar. Goddamn horse locks, cheeky bastard, son of a bitch.
The only reason I monitorize the comments on YouTube is because people are trying to spread my home address and where I work.
And like, what the fuck, dude? Because even Marty Music Biz tried to stop the relationship from happening. And I thought he was on my fucking side. And then he starts trolling me. I'm like, what the fuck did I do to him, dude?
See what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm fucking saying? Flip the shoe on the other foot. You'd be like... But not to push the sound of it, to kind of emphasize the point of...
Anyone else were to walk down the street buck-ass naked, they would be put on the offendery list.
I tell you what, no respect. I'm so fucking ugly, I made the sex offendery list for touching myself.
No, fuck the sex offendery list. I'm not the same person I was in my parents' basement, dude. I've matured into a young adult.
You got your Baptist, your Catholic, your Methodist, your Lutheran, and then you got your Christian.
And if you say anything against it, you're a bigot. You're some kind of phobe. And it's just like, I'm going to hit this vape. You know, fuck Adolf Hitler. The human race is the superior human race. You know what I'm saying? The superior race is the human race. But if you date somebody who's also got the same problems you do, it can work out beautifully because you'll understand each other like a book. Or it can be a complete fucking disaster because you can't stand each other. And that's the catch-all 22. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm a little tensed about this issue. If that's the right word to use. In this plethora of vocabulary of Cobra with his fancy dictionary words.
Thank you for watching, and I will most definitely catch you all later.
You were shocked at how many Gamba ads were on. Welcome to modern sports. every part of modern professional sports is polluted with pro gambling ads. They own every inch of the space. This is the reality now. Okay, good luck. So many AI helper ads were popping off.
.com has something for everyone.
Yeah, she sells. You got anything more boutique?
Oui, right this way.
Yeah, we're talking.
What about something more family friendly?
Maybe a resort with a water park?
Or somewhere less family friendly?
Yep, one Vegas hotel for the bride-to-be.
What if we hate everything?
We have free cancellation. Find exactly what you're booking for. Booking.com, booking.com.
You wanna go fishing tomorrow? I got a colonoscopy tomorrow.
Fellas, I accidentally threw a... They're on their way. They're here.
You call this a party?
I do hate that this ad was kind of cool. I thought it was like stupid, but it was kind of fun.
Sag party. Launch. These beers are a metaphor for an invitation.
Is that our leaf blower?
Party at the Sag.
You are cordially invited to the end of the cul-de-sac.
This is incredible.
Your mower smokes meat?
Oh, a smoker cuts grass.
Hell yeah.
I spend most of my money on this. New rig, fully custom.
Is the top of the hour in here? No, as you know, at the Hassan Abbey broadcast, this is an ad-free broadcast unless we're looking at ads that played at the Super Bowl. Okay. I thought Bud Light was woke. It's no longer woke, dude. They got Shane Gillis on there. They got Post Malone on there. It's no longer woke. Bud Light is back in. Okay. You can still subscribe if you would like to support the show or send me links. There's no assurance that I will actually watch those links that you send me. And use emotes all around the platform. You can subscribe for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Twitch Prime is still free.
Bud Lights can you fit in that puppy? As many Bud Lights as it takes. A lot of Bud Lights. It's cul-de-sac's popping. Bill, get off the boat. The HOA's already breathing down my neck.
Falling behind, Crimson.
Thank you, Bill Morigar, for the 10 community gifted subs, and Patty Pegan for the 5 community gifted subs.
Let's go, dogs.
What the f is this? I didn't even see this one. Adrian is online. Thank you for the 10 gifted.
Jeremy is a method actor. What is that? Coming out to his ready. The acting method from the book.
There's a book?
He's preparing. He's doing his research.
I never did no research on nothing. Look where I'm at.
Exactly.
We're big time now.
You ruined it.
Did I ruin it, or do you have a breakfast named after you?
Oh.
Hey. What are you doing in there?
We're doing a Dunkin' Donuts commercial, right?
Right.
I'm just trying to find the character. I think I found a way in.
Emily Giselle, thank you for the 5 gifted. Rand 940, thank you for the 10 gifted.
You're from Boston. I'm from Boston. Duncan is Boston. Boston is Paul Revere. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. The redcoats are coming.
You're an artist, and I know what that's like, but how long is it going to take for the bean method?
I mean, I'll be ready in like 3 hours.
You should have paid for Matt. I told you that.
Only from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. A little stiff. You got a job in?
Nice, dude. Of course, FanDuel ads, obviously.
Interview? I'm doing the FanDuel Kick of Destiny 3 live Super Bowl Sunday. I'll finally be a kicker like I always dreamed. It all comes down to this, folks.
Korea and North Korea will be more interesting than Japan. Japan is going to be business as usual. Offer them defense contracts, beef up their army, even though it's unconstitutional. Okay, and that's it. You know, I'm skipping this press conference, by the way, because it's boring. Even I'm not that big of a weeb. All right, it's just It's the most expected press conference of all time. Obviously, Shigeru Ishiba, and I've been following this on the Japanese news side. The entire Japanese foreign policy or American relationship hinges on how hard you can glaze Trump. It's the Shinzo Abe method. This is something that Japanese news media has talked about quite frequently during Shinzo Abe's reign as well, where there's this one famous photo of all the world leaders that are like kind of trying to dominate Donald Trump, and he's just sitting there like this with a smug face in his and Shinzo Abe is actually the only world leader that is copying Trump, also crossing his arms. That is a picture that in Japanese news was basically a summary of how Shinzo Abe chose to deal with Donald Trump, and that is precisely what they're going to continue doing. That's what the LDP is going to continue to do. I think this is not a very here it is. This is not a very interesting relationship. Like, I don't think that, as you can see right here, this was the photo that summarizes like the Japanese relationship with Donald Trump the first time around. Obviously, Shinzo is now dead. He was assassinated.
I'll be back.
But they've always had a fairly solid relationship because of this, and this is what the Japanese hopes are, that they don't get destroyed like Canada or whatever, right? Or even threatened like Canada, even if Canada is not getting destroyed and there's a pause put on the tariffs. So it's an uninteresting relationship overall. I think what is infinitely more interesting is what Donald Trump will do with South Korea. Because as you guys know, just wondering, but is this camera angle temporary? I like it, but not sure if it's about to go back to the usual one. Dude, I think this is one of the only negative aspects of streaming on Twitch with a neurodivergent audience, is that like you just don't care about anything that's going on. This is the real camera angle, and I will, once I fix the camera angle and fix the autofocus and fix the lighting, this is the camera angle I'm going to go back to, okay? But for the time being, enjoy Kaya. Anyway, as I was saying, I think the real interesting relationship, the real interesting dynamic will be with South Korea. Why? Because South Korea is a place where there is a lot of instability. The LDP's power and influence has diminished over the past couple of decades, and it's pretty significant because for the most part, Japan has been a one-party rule leadership, even though there's a lower house and upper house, there's a theoretical democracy, but ultimately it's mostly just the one party that has dominated the country's politics in perpetuity post-World War II. Having said that, however, despite its influence diminishing a little bit, LDP's influence diminishing a little bit, what's really interesting is South Korea. South Korea has real instability right now. There was a martial law and a false coup that failed. And Donald Trump's relationship with South Korea has also always been interesting. Is the audio still not synchronized? If it's not synchronized, it's on your end. You might have to refresh. Okay, you are a fucking racist as Team Aziad. Oh, is it because you wrote in Arabic and it auto-tagged Fawzabot? Yeah.
Finish the job.
Sorry, Team Aziad, you can't write in Arabic. The reason why, or any other languages really, and the reason why is because, you know, I don't speak either of those languages, so I can't moderate adequately. You are not in sync. If I am not in sync, it might be because you need to refresh, like I said. What is this? Your ops got no motion? What? Dude, come on. Please stop. Even as a joke, I don't want to see what Ethan is doing, okay?
What goes around?
I'm over here trying to explain foreign policy. It's unironically desynced and refreshing does not fix it. Okay, I don't know. I give up. I'm sorry. Anyway, what Donald Trump will do with South Korea and North Korea will be more interesting than Japan. Japan is going to be business as usual. Offer them defense contracts, beef up their army, even though it's unconstitutional. Okay, and that's it.
非常にこの件に関してもこれから私たちが取り組む予定でありますけども、特に自動車工場というものは素晴らしいものになると思います。米国への投資が進み、自動車を米国で作るということ、これは非常に良いビジネスになると思います。多くの国々からこういった投資がありますけども、これはひとえに米国の税制があるからだと思います。ですので、こういった業務というものはこれからもどんどん進んでいくことを期待します。トヨタ市ですけども、があります。
Any other things? To what extent will you discuss North Korea today, sir?
That'll always be a topic, especially with Japan. We will be discussing North Korea and many other things. We'll be spending pretty much the day, but that's always a topic.
Mr. President, have you changed your mind about the sale of U.S. steel?
No, I think we're going to be discussing that today. No, I haven't, and I hear we'll have some pretty good information on that. You might want to go, please.
Tariffs an option, Mr. President.
Have you? Okay.
Are tariffs an option if the deficit doesn't get to equilibrium or to equality?
Yes, they are.
Mr. President, can you discuss what your plan is for reciprocal trade? Are you signing an EO on that today?
I'll be announcing that next week, reciprocal trade, so that we're treated evenly with other countries. We don't want any more or any less. So I'll be announcing that next week. And many other things having to do not even with trade, but other things. But I'll be talking about reciprocal trade sometime next week. We'll have a news conference and we'll lay it out. Pretty simple. It affects everybody, yeah. Reciprocal, yeah. We'll be talking about that next week.
関税を課すっていう話になってるんですけど、関税が課されることについてそのように考えていらっしゃいますか？
お互いにそれが利益になるようにいうことが重要なことだと思っております。合衆国の発展、そして日本国の発展、そのために有益な制度となることを期待をしておりまして、具体的なことについてはまだこれからということになります。
I understand that the key point in this regard is to make that for mutually beneficial. That means that would benefit the development of the United States as well as the development of Japan. And I do hope that whatever measures and actions should meet this criteria, meaning that serving the interest of both countries. But as to specifics, I understand that we are going to have further discussion.
Correct.
Mr. President, are there any specific concessions that you will be asking for from Japan that you can share?
We'll be having. I think it'll be very easy for Japan. We have a fantastic relationship. I don't think we'll have any problem whatsoever. They want fairness also.
それはうまく進むと思います。日本は素晴らしいパートナーですし、彼らもことがスムーズに進むことを期待していると思います。これは双方にとってです。
Mr. President, do you have a reaction to the new Time magazine cover that has Elon Musk sitting behind your Resolute desk?
タイムマガジンにイーロン・マスクが大統領の机の後ろで
No, don't translate that. Don't translate that. That's embarrassing. He does not like it. That's the type of stuff that actually does get to Trump. Like, yeah, sure, it's silliness, but Trump is silly. That's it. That is exactly the type of stuff that Donald Trump actively gets annoyed by.
ありますけども、それに関するコメントは何かありますか?
Is Time magazine still in business? I didn't even know that.
まだタイムマガジンは廃刊じゃないんですか?
Elon is doing a great job.
Yeah, they're like forcing themselves to laugh at this. They're like, ah ha ha ha, you are so funny. You are so funny, Mr. President. Yeah, we also hate Time magazine. It's like, bro, you're Japanese. What are you talking about? Why would you ever care about, fake news media and Time magazine?
He's finding tremendous fraud and corruption and waste. You see it with the USAID, but you're going to see it even more so with other agencies and other parts of government. He's got a staff that's fantastic. He's wanted to be able to do this for a long time, and everybody else knew it was existent, but I think never so much when you look at USAID. That's a fraud. The whole thing is a fraud. Very little being put to good use. Every single line that I look at in terms of events and transactions is either corrupt or ridiculous. And we're going to be doing that throughout government. And I think we're going to be very close to balancing budgets for the first time in many years. I think we're going to be very close to, in addition to monies coming in from tariffs, et cetera, but no, he's doing a very good job. I'm very happy with it.
Will you put Elon Musk up on the podium for us to ask him some questions, Mr. President, at any point? Will you put Elon Musk up on the podium for us to ask him some questions?
Oh, sure. He's not shy. Elon's not shy.
Any further deliberations on Gaza, sir? The timetable for a takeover?
No deliberations. It's been very well received, where basically the United States would view it as a real estate transaction where we'll be an investor in that part of the world. And no rush to do anything. We wouldn't need anybody there. It would be supplied and given to us by Israel. They'll watch it in terms of security when they're talking about boots in the ground or anything. But I think the fact that we're there, that we have an investment there, I think would go a long way to creating peace. We don't want to see everybody move back and then move out in 10 years. This has been going on for 50 years, much more than that. We just want to see stability. That would be having us have that particular piece in that particular location, I think would show great stability and would lead to great stability in the area for very little money, very little price, and we wouldn't need soldiers at all. That will be taken care of by others. And the investments are taken care of by others also. So for no investment, I mean virtually no investment whatsoever, it would bring stability to the area, and others can invest in it later on. But we're in no rush on it. It's absolutely no rush.
President Trump, do you believe DeepSeek is a national security threat, and how do you plan to elaborate on AI initiatives?
On where?
DeepSeek, do you believe it's a national security threat?
No, I think it's happening. I mean, it's a technology that's happening. It's actually, I think we're going to benefit if it's correct what's going on now, that it'll be a lot less expensive. The AI we're talking about will be a lot less expensive than people originally thought. That's a good thing. I view that as a very good development, not a bad development.
Mr. President, on autos specifically, in your first term, you tried to tariff autos. Is that on the table still? Are you trying to do that in your second administration?
Auto tariff?
Auto tariff?
Oh, yeah, sure. That's on the table. That's always on the table. It's a very big deal. Because we have cases where we don't supply autos and other countries do, and we have to equalize it. We have to stabilize it and equalize it.
Will you have Vice President Vance meet with President Zelensky next week while he's in Europe?
I will probably be meeting with President Zelensky next week, and I will probably.
The amount of glaze that he offers to China is weirding me out. He even mentions that China's education is fantastic, which is odd, because that's like a thing that you normally wouldn't hear from an American politician, even though it's the truth, right? Usually, at best, Democrats will glaze like Nordic style social democracies or whatever in terms of social safety nets. I don't ever hear from even the Democrats in terms of like what China is doing that is good. Especially odd considering that he is the #1 China hawk and he just regularly will glaze China and is also undermining a bunch of State Department cutouts like USAID. I don't understand it. I will readily admit, I suspect that it's because they want to, like I said, centralize USAID and stop with soft power and only go after hard power initiatives and just try to like bully countries rather than like offer any aid whatsoever. But it truly doesn't make sense.
To President Putin, I'd like to see that war end for one primary reason. They're killing so many people. You're losing millions of people on a battlefield. In this case, mostly the battlefield. You have 800,000 or 900,000 Russian soldiers are dead and very badly wounded. And the same thing with Ukraine. You have probably 700,000 with Ukraine. The numbers they gave are a little bit lower than that, but I believe those numbers aren't correct. I'd like to see it end just on a human basis. It's terrible what's going on. They have open fields with no protection. The only thing a bullet can hit is a human body, and the human body dies as soon as it gets hit. Now, I'd like to see that end. It's a ridiculous war. It would have never started if I were president. That war would have never started. Putin would not have started that war if I were president. And by the way, you wouldn't have had October 7th if I was president either. That mess would not have started. But no, I would very much like to help out. One of the things we're looking at with President Zelensky is having the security of their assets. They have assets underground, rare earth and other things, but primarily rare earth. And we want to have security. Really, we want security because, as you know, Europe is putting up.
Again, quiet part, but out loud. He's like, yeah, we want their rare earth minerals. We must secure them. Like, and it's not, I don't think it's rare earth minerals in general for Ukraine, but it's still like state-owned assets. I'm sure that there's like some mining contracts that they could get out of it too, but it's virtually every single state-owned asset or every single asset sold off to foreign investors. It's just like when he said, oh, we're pulling out of Syria, but also we're maintaining security over the oil rigs. That's it. Or when he basically said, who's going to buy these weapons? If we don't sell billions of dollars of weapons to Saudi Arabia, someone else will. Do you have $1 billion that you want to give me for weapons? Donald Trump is a very frustrating figure for a lot of Americans because he does have a tendency to say the quiet part out loud and never really shelter from the truth, never really try to massage his takes to ensure that there's some semblance of defending the international rule-based order. Now, ironically enough, there is no difference between the modus operandi of Donald Trump and previous administrations in that regard. There are some exceptions to this rule, of course, but ultimately it's just the difference. The major difference is like aesthetically, he just very openly states what he wants. He won't masquerade and say, oh, we must protect Ukraine because Ukraine is gay and woke or whatever, right? He won't say that. He'll just be like, yeah, we want mining contracts. We want their natural resources. That's it. Ukraine is not that gay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. I'm just making an exaggerated example of like the ways in which liberals oftentimes will try to offer additional context to why they're doing something in a way that liberals will be on board with, okay? And the reality of the matter is people don't respond positively to that because faced with the indecency, when they're faced with the cruel actions of the American state, they're like, oh, but I don't like that because it doesn't make me feel good. Right? That's it. Why is this on audio so delayed? I don't know. For some people, I'm still delayed, it seems. But for others, I'm not. So I don't know what's going on, honestly. I can't tell if people are memeing or not.
Much less money than us. Much. NATO, Europe, call it whatever you want. And we're at probably 300 billion plus, and they're at probably, the real number is 100 billion. That's a lot.
Do you want to do this real quick and see if it fixes it? I checked off on properties on my desktop audio. I checked off use device. Yeah, I don't think I have that right now. Like, I don't think it's, it's not. Device timestamps is not on right now. So I don't know why there's a delay. Timestamps, toggle it, see if it fixes it. No, it'll actually make it worse if I did use device timestamps. Let's see if it worked. it's probably going to be worse now.
A lot of money, but it's 200 billion less than us, and there's an ocean in between. And they need it more than us, so we're asking them to equalize and get even. But we're also asking President Zelensky for...
It's worse now. Yeah, the video is probably worse. The desktop audio is worse. All right, I fixed it. Seems like a Twitch issue. I had to refresh and it started lagging. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I can try to fix the ingest again. 1 second. You'll see a brief blip. There'll be a brief moment of effing. Let's see. We're back. Is it better? Why does everybody say F? I know. You don't have to refresh. I'm changing the ingest. God damn, everybody's complaining about the F. There is no F. It's not a F. I did it. I did it on purpose.
The security of, we're putting all this money up and we're saying, where does it stop? And yet we want to see it out to an end. We want to see it end. But we are going to be asking for the security, and we've already told him, of an equal amount of something where our money, I mean, the American tax $1 billion. Biden never negotiated. He never told Europe to put in more money. And it got out of hand, just like NATO.
Rando,
NATO,
with another 10
we were paying almost 100% of NATO when I first came in. Everybody was taking advantage of the good old United States, but not anymore. So what, and now, if you speak to the Secretary General of NATO, who was very nice when he was here 2 weeks ago, he said what Trump did was amazing. He got everybody to pay. And to do that, you have to ask, and Biden never asked. So we're in for probably close to $200 billion more than Europe, and yet obviously it affects Europe much more than us. So we would like them to to equalize. They have to go more. And from our standpoint, we do want security and all this money that we're putting up.
And you're speaking with him next week, sir? Is that what you said?
He may meet next week, yeah. Whenever he'd like. I'm here. I'm here. Could be Washington. Well, I'm not going there.
Are you planning to meet with President Putin, or are you just planning
it could be, it could be. We've always had a good relationship. President Putin and I have always had a good relationship. That's why it's so sad that it happened. This would have never happened if I were president. It's so sad to see it happen. So many dead people. By the way, so many cities are demolished. They're like, you talk about Gaza? Well, take a look at Ukraine. So many of those cities are demolition sites.
Dude, oh,
demolished.
You can't.
So sad. Should have never happened. All those beautiful golden domes, but much more importantly, all those beautiful people are dead. Period. And it should have never happened. Thank you very much, everybody.
Ukraine is so flat.
In order after order since his inauguration, Trump has attempted to dismantle the government, our rights, and the Constitution in ways that are often blatantly illegal. Through his lackeys now positioned in key agencies and Elon Musk positioned as his extra special errand boy, Trump has made every attempt to make good on his promise to go after his supposed enemies and, as Project 2025 foretold, amass as much power as possible into his own tiny little hands and out of the hands of the rest of government. Last week, our episode on Wednesday discussed the absolutely abysmal response by congressional Democrats to do anything even remotely approaching oppositional, and oftentimes even conceding and going along with Trump appointments and other actions, indicating that there's not a lot of faith to be put in the legislative branch to follow through on their whole end of the checks and balances bargain. They're so bought out by moneyed interests and frozen with fear over getting reelected that they have no real impulse to do anything at all that might, I don't know, save the republic. And so the job and the full weight of our system of checks and balances falls on the shoulders of the judicial branch, the one branch where there are a handful of judges with the gumption to actually stand up for the rule of law and what's left of this country's Constitution. And some of these judges are Reagan appointees, y'all. Dare I say, and I don't say this lightly, Reagan would be an improvement over what's happening right now. That's how you know it's bad. But as judges have stepped in to remind Trump and his cronies about what the law says and how they're blatantly breaking it, the judiciary has come under increased scrutiny and attacks from Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon, Daddy Issues Musk, and others hell hell-bent on tearing apart this country limb by limb. It's becoming what some legal experts are calling a coup, an all-out constitutional crisis. But what does that mean? Like, literally, what is a constitutional crisis? And what happens if Trump decides to ignore the final say from judges on what is and is not against the law? Let's get into it. But first, a major palate cleanser. I'm not sure if you guys remember, but a few months ago, I told y'all that Bellesa made the first ever silent toy. And guess what? They now have a full collection with the same tech. It's called Whisper Tech. So whatever your vibe is, get it? They've got you covered. In peace mode. Not to keep harping on this, but just again to give you a lay of the land, as I've been doing at the beginning of every episode lately, because it can feel very overwhelming, and that is very much by design. Trump passed a number of executive orders. I covered them in my episode right after the inauguration. Those executive orders that were especially egregious included ending birthright citizenship, declaring an emergency at the border, pausing all federal funding, and denying employment protections for career civil servants. That's the head of the beast. From there, the tentacles spread through various government agencies, now headed by Trump loyalists, issuing new rules and regulations to carry out Trump's many orders. The people pulling the strings behind Trump, who himself is mainly getting spray tans, going golfing, and saying whatever comes to his mind at press conferences and in media interviews, the people actually doing the work, his underlings eager to please him and eager to mold the government in their ultra-right-wing image, are basically just going line by line through Project 2025 and checking off boxes. The executive branch is being dismantled in favor of concentrating as much power as possible in the hands of the president, who then doles out roles to his most loyal henchmen, who then scurry off into the night to dismantle the parts of government meant to protect people, like USAID or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the agency tasked with holding businesses accountable and returning money to the pockets of U.S. consumers who were wronged and whose employees were told to stay home this week, while beefing up the parts of the government meant to police people, like sending the military to the border to stave off the enemy invasion of, like, young families and their babies who are trying to find work and a place to live. Enemy invasion, send in the troops. And because the Project 2025 playbook has been in circulation for at least a year and a half, and the far-right faction of the Republican Party is apparently the only ones who read or prepared for its eventual implementation, these things are happening at fucking breakneck speed because they were ready and waiting in the wings to execute. And now every other corner of the government is trying to play catch-up, even though they literally told us their plan at least a year and a half ago. Luckily, however, there are some people who actually prepared, and so as quickly as these orders are coming out, there are also nonprofits, legal orgs, unions, state attorneys general, and others who are slapping them with lawsuit after lawsuit in an attempt to block the worst of the fallout. It's happening so fast that just as the work of the executive branch to undermine the entire government is hard to keep track of, it's also hard to keep track of all of these lawsuits and what's happening with each of them. Because the judiciary is a very slow tortoise of a branch, many of the lawsuits have yet to be heard or even have initial hearings scheduled. But some of them did move quickly to at least get emergency injunctions put in place, which is where a judge says that a law or order cannot go into effect until the judicial branch has had time to hear the case and determine the legality of the order or action. And because of the brazen ineptitude, or even worse, blatant complicity of our lawmakers, both Democrat and Republican alike, it is truly just these injunctions and these judges who are holding the line for this country. And I don't mean to be hyperbolic here. Fear-mongering ain't my jam, but I think I'm being pretty realistic when I say that. We are walking a tightrope here, and the only thing holding the other end of the rope in place is a few judges in robes who are willing to stick their necks out and actually faithfully apply the rule of law. So here's how they've done that so far. After Trump issued his executive order saying that the 14th Amendment does not guarantee birthright citizenship and never has, which goes blatantly against the plain language of the Constitution as well as a century and a half of judicial precedent, multiple lawsuits were filed by state attorneys general and others to try to stop the order. At this point, at least 3 different judges have blocked that order in New Hampshire, Seattle, and Maryland. The Trump administration is appealing the ruling in the Seattle case, at least, which issued an indefinite injunction. And just because I want to drive home that there are judges out there taking their role very seriously and doing courageous things to stand up to literal tyranny, I want to play this recording from what the Seattle judge said on Thursday. And I first heard this on Dahlia Lithwick's podcast Amicus in the episode titled Trying to Undo a Coup in the Courts. This is the judge issuing his ruling from the bench.
It has become ever more apparent that to our president, the rule of law is but an impediment to his policy goals. The rule of law is, according to him, something to navigate around or simply ignore, whether that be for political or personal gain. Nevertheless, in this courtroom and under my watch, the rule of law is a bright beacon which I intend to follow. I said this 2 weeks ago, and I'll say it again today. There are moments in the world's history when people look back and ask, where were the lawyers? Where were the judges? In these moments, the rule of law becomes especially vulnerable. I refuse to let that beacon go dark today. As a judge, my job is not only to uphold the law, but to protect the rule of law itself. Birthright citizenship is a fundamental constitutional right. The 14th Amendment secures the blessings of liberty to our posterity by bestowing on all those born in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction the rights of citizenship. We are all citizens subject to the rule of law. No amount of policy debate can change that. And the fact that the government has cloaked what is effectively a constitutional amendment under the guise of an executive order is equally unconstitutional. The Constitution is not something with which the government may play policy games. If the government wants to change the exceptional American grant of birthright citizenship, it needs to amend the Constitution itself. That's how our Constitution works, and that's how the rule of law works. Because the president's order attempts to circumscribe this process, it is clearly unconstitutional. The preliminary injunction is granted on a nationwide basis.
This is a Reagan appointee, y'all. Writing like that is the kind of stuff that actually makes me excited about the law. It's biting, it's smart. Anyway, Trump has appealed that ruling, which is the proper mechanism by which he should be challenging these cases against him. And hopefully the judges in the appellate courts will agree with this judge. And while it may be appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court, Dahlia Lithwick in that same Amicus episode made the compelling point that the Supreme Court does not hear every single case appealed up to it. It chooses which ones to hear and has limited bandwidth for taking on cases. So the sheer quantity of lawsuits and the number of appeals makes it pretty much impossible for the Supreme Court to hear every single case. So even though, yes, they seem predisposed to rule in Trump's favor and in favor of making the president a little tiny king, they likely cannot realistically do so for all of these cases. But that should not be the one thing giving us peace of mind that the judicial branch will hold up their end of the checks and balances bargain and that the courageous rulings of these lower court judges will not be in vain. But alas, the Supreme Court traded its soul and its credibility to be a lapdog to a megalomaniac dictator. Them's the breaks. And we can also rest easy knowing that despite the speed of these preliminary injunctions, the judicial branch does typically move at a snail's pace, so it'll take a minute for these things to reach the Supreme Court if they ever do. Okay, elsewhere in the District of Columbia, which is where a lot of these lawsuits were filed, a lawsuit was filed on Friday by two unions representing the USAID workers. In that case, Judge Carl Nichols issued a temporary injunction on the Trump administration's plan to place 2,200 USAID workers on paid leave. It also reinstated the 500 workers Trump had already placed on administrative leave. The temporary injunction is only set to last until the 14th because there's a hearing scheduled for this Wednesday, the 12th, where he will consider a longer-term injunction. The lawsuit also sought a restoration of federal grants and to reopen USAID buildings, which, according to reporting from the BBC, Judge Nichols seemed less likely to grant, though further hearings will be necessary. Judge Nichols, by the way, is a Trump appointee and sided with the union, saying they would suffer irreparable harm without the injunction, while the government would suffer zero harm from his injunction. And if that doesn't make you feel slightly warm and fuzzy, I don't know what will. At the end of last month, a judge blocked the Trump administration's freeze on all federal funding, an order Trump later withdrew, which, despite the chaos, does present a potential signal that there are even limits to the amount of chaos his administration is willing to create. They have to continue to at least appear legitimate, you know? It is only through the onslaught of formal orders and following protocol that they will be able to claim legitimacy, despite the orders themselves blatantly breaking the law. It's the Hitler method. Use legitimate means to break down the government until you've broken it down enough that there's no checks or balances left. Separately, last Thursday, in a lawsuit filed by unions on behalf of federal employees, a federal judge blocked Elon Musk's proposed buyout of federal workers. This was the one where federal employees were sent an email with the subject line, "A fork in the road," exactly the same subject line as the one sent to Twitter employees by Elon Musk. They were then instructed that they could resign by sending an email with the word "resign" in the subject line, and they would continue to receive pay and benefits until October. 60,000 employees have taken the offer, representing about 2.5% of the total federal workforce. Lawyers and other experts have said the buyout offer itself is legally dubious, like it could be rescinded at any time. Congress has to go through an appropriations process in March that could end whatever funding the agencies had to keep paying the employees who took the buyout, etc. This temporary injunction only lasts until today, Monday, as the judge is set to hear arguments in a hearing today on whether the injunction should continue so the case can play out. Last Tuesday, a judge blocked the Trump administration from sending transgender women to men's prisons and terminating their gender-affirming care. The lawsuit was brought by 3 transgender inmates, and the injunction applies to all 16 transgender women currently in federal women's prisons. According to reporting from Reuters, there are 2,230 trans inmates in federal prisons and halfway houses. 1,506 are trans women, mostly being held in men's prisons. That, too, was an injunction against Trump issued by a Reagan-appointed judge, finding that the government had not adequately disputed the transgender inmates' assertions that they were at higher risk of physical and sexual violence in violation of their 8th Amendment rights against cruel and unusual punishment. And on Sunday, a federal judge temporarily enjoined the Trump administration from transferring 3 Venezuelan men in immigration detention to Guantanamo Bay, though other immigrants have already been transferred there. On Saturday, a federal judge issued an order blocking Doge from accessing sensitive data on Americans through the Treasury Department's payment system that it forcibly ransacked last week. This order was the result of a lawsuit brought by 19 state attorneys general against the Trump administration in a case filed in New York City, saying that Doge violated federal law, created security risks, and opened up the possibility that those with improper access to data could initiate illegal freezes on federal funds. New York AG Letitia James issued a statement.
President Trump does not have the power to give our private information away to whomever he wants. And he does not have the power to cut federal spending that Congress approved, much less to do so by giving the richest man in the world the keys to all Americans' most sensitive information.
Separate lawsuits have been filed by unions and other advocacy groups to block access to the payment system and to protest the creation and opaque practices of Doge. According to reporting from Time, a judge in Washington state issued an order on Thursday temporarily restricting access to 2 employees with read-only privileges. There are some alarm bells being raised about these lawsuits in particular, as there is conflicting information about the extent of the access Doge has to the payment system. The government is insisting that Doge only has read-only access, that they can see stuff, but they can't control the payment system. However, people inside the Treasury Department and others with knowledge of the Doge takeover of the system have said that they gained complete control and access to the system, meaning they could have the power to mess with payments for virtually every aspect of the government, everything from Social Security payments to major government contractor payments. This is concerning not only because it's horrifying that the richest man in the world, as an unelected private citizen with millions if not billions of dollars flowing to his own companies and their competitors from the federal government, would have that kind of power, but also because if it is true that they have more access than the federal government's lawyers are alleging in these various cases, that indicates a new level of government attorneys being willing to knowingly lie in court about what the administration is doing. That goes beyond ethically dubious and into criminal territory. But perjury would be a crime that would have to be punished through criminal lawsuits filed by the federal government. You see how this gets complicated when it's the federal government doing the perjuring. And according to reporting from the New Republic and elsewhere, these losses in court, especially related to Doge, are pissing off the right-wing operatives that have the most to gain from the judiciary laying down and not enforcing the law. And this is where it's starting to get pretty spooky, and why some legal scholars are saying we are on the brink of a constitutional crisis. According to the Constitution and 250 years of precedent and the basic functioning of our government, it is judges' jobs and the job of the judicial branch to determine what the law says. Lawmakers write it, judges interpret it. And especially in these cases and in the federal government, often the judges are the determiners of what the Constitution says. And once they make that determination, it is meant to be followed. The only way to change what the Constitution says is through a whole-ass amendment. And if lawmakers don't like what the judge says their law means, they have to rewrite the law and try again. If a president doesn't like what the judge says their order means, they have to try again with a new order using a new legal theory. They can appeal rulings and fight it out until they have exhausted their appeal options in court, but they have to follow what the judges say until they win in court. And if they don't win, they have to follow what the judges say and act according to the court's interpretation of the law or the Constitution, unless and until a new law or order or amendment is written to try to clarify or reword things in a way that aligns with the new way they want the law to be interpreted and what the judge has said the law says. It is in this way that the Constitution functions, and the checks and balances among the three branches interplay so that no single branch has unilateral and final say on anything with zero checks from any other branch. That is very much by design, because the founders were coming from Imperial England, where the king's rule was very much unchecked. But checks and balances means sometimes not getting your way. And that is very inconvenient and aggravating, especially for people who always get their way because they can buy their way into anything. And so predictably, Musk and others are throwing a temper tantrum online in response to not getting their way, which would be cute and childish if it weren't for the fact that the ideas they're espousing amount to a full-blown constitutional crisis if acted upon. Elon, of course, has been especially active on Twitter, agreeing with and reposting all sorts of slop, including Senator Mike Lee's assertion that Trump is facing a judicial coup. Basically, all these judges sitting on their own in their respective chambers and applying the law to the facts and issuing rulings based on their legal opinions are staging a coup. And definitely not the group of unelected people literally forcibly entering government buildings and stealing our data. No coup there. Musk reshared a tweet from someone suggesting that it's time to defy judicial rulings, and another one that said, I don't like the precedent it sets when you defy a judicial ruling, but I'm just wondering what other options are these judges leaving us? Right. That's the point. The point is that you don't have the option to break the law. That isn't an option. There are no other options because the things that they're trying to do are illegal. That's like saying, well, this judge issued a restraining order against me, so I won't murder this person. So I'm just wondering what other option this judge is leaving me but to defy the judicial ruling and go ahead and do the murder anyway. And Musk loves to claim plausible deniability by saying that a retweet doesn't mean an endorsement. But I don't know, I'm not over here reposting things I don't agree with unless it's to say something about how I don't agree with it, you know? You don't get to say, well, just because I disseminated these ideas to my millions and millions of followers doesn't mean I'm promoting them. Matt Gaetz also called for the impeachment of the judge because of corruption, which is fucking rich coming from someone with a full-ass federal investigation against him filled to the gills with evidence of corruption. And J.D. Vance, for his part, loves to quote Andrew slave-holding rapist Trail of Tears Jackson, saying, quote, the Supreme Court has issued their opinion. Now let them enforce it, which is understood to be a challenge to the court, saying, I see what you said, now make me. Vance also tweeted, if a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. If a judge tried to command the attorney general and how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. Which, like, yeah, no, Sherlock, these judges aren't trying to control his legitimate power. They're trying to curtail his illegal exercise of power. It is not legitimate if it is against the Constitution or the law. All of this, taken together, paints a pretty bleak picture wherein the people who hold the reins of power at the highest level are at the very least willing to question and attempt to undermine the legitimacy of the judiciary. As Northeastern University law professor Dan Ehrman recently told NBC, the bottom line is that our system is predicated on good faith, but also the rule of law in America means that the government abides by court rulings. The courts lack the power of the purse and the sword. They don't have an army, and they don't have a huge budget. They have to rely on their legitimacy. In a world where Trump and those in his administration do decide to shirk the ruling of judges, there is one final check on that power. They would be acting illegally, outside the confines of the law. They would then be committing what would amount to blatant high crimes and misdemeanors. They would have to be impeached by Congress. You know, that limp we talked about last Wednesday. This is the constitutional crisis experts are warning about. The executive takes unlawful actions, the rulings by judges are ignored, and Congress does nothing to stop it. It is the complete breakdown of democratic governance and of the functioning of the entire system. It is tyranny because it is power unchecked by any intervening force. And it is fascism because it does so gleefully while also practicing brutal nationalism and directing the police force of the nation against vulnerable minorities and political enemies. As Robert Paxton presciently described in his 2004 book, Anatomy of Fascism, we have not seen any fascist regime that lasts a long time. We have not seen a fascist regime that does not end in complete implosion, because the people implementing the regime would rather self-destruct than admit defeat. The creation of fascist power does not rest simply in the hands of a single populist leader hell-bent on watching the world burn. It also doesn't result simply from that leader being surrounded by oligarchs with capital. A key ingredient for fascism to flourish and eventually implode is the acquiescence of those in positions of power to that leader and his party. It is conservatives who genuinely believe in respecting the rule of law, but who are so terrified of the potential of leftist leadership that they're willing to go along with the tide of right-wing fervor that brings the fascist leader into power. According to Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett, many in the Republican Party are doing just that, quietly behind the scenes, hand-wringing about the lengths especially Elon Musk is willing to go to undermine the rule of law in this country, but unwilling to speak out because they are so beholden to moneyed interests, so terrified of getting reelected, and so blindly anti-leftist that they too prefer self-destruction over the potential of defeat. Fascism is not an inevitability of history. It was not inevitable in Germany or in Italy. Conditions have to be right for it, of course, but fascism is the result of a series of choices over and over again by the people in power, by the people around those in power, to acquiesce to the leader and to his party out of sheer self-interest and cowardice. As of right now, a few judges are standing up to this overreach in the only way they can under our system of government. The fate of the country rests in whether Trump and MAGA leadership will follow their rule, and if not, whether Congress would have the will to successfully impeach those leaders under the Constitution. Without that, we will have a constitutional crisis on our hands. I encourage you to make as much noise as possible about this. I laid out a few things Congress members could be doing to thwart the advance of Trump initiatives in my last episode, and our elected representatives need to be put on blast. Things are feeling overwhelming, and I don't like fear-mongering. I would not be painting such a bleak picture if I didn't think it was time to sound the fucking alarms. To help with overwhelm, I highly suggest you focus solely on putting your elected representatives on blast. Show up to their offices, call them, email them, write them letters. Tell them Trump must be stopped, and it is their job to put up as many roadblocks as possible. You can simply ask them, what are you doing to stop Trump? Put them on blast every time they do something you don't like. Make it your mission to be as annoying as humanly possible to the short list of people who call you a constituent. By focusing your efforts in that way, you will be a lot more effective than if you were to try to do everything and save everyone. And educating yourself is important too. You can join me over on my Patreon community, where I just launched the Why America Co-Learning Lab, a learning community having discussions and making connections, along with a monthly syllabus curated by me. All year, we'll be covering topics under the umbrella theme of Eat the Rich, Building Solidarity in the New Gilded Age. February's topic is all about how to build a movement even when you're feeling overwhelmed as hell. This is all hosted over on Patreon, where you also can get ad-free and uncensored versions of every one of these episodes. Joining me over on Patreon is the single best way that we can support the work of this channel. If you're interested, please join us. Patreon.com/Legion Miller. Thank you to my multi-platinum patrons, Thomas Orff, Sarah Shelby, Art, David, RH, Latranger Lucas, Joshua Cole, Thomas Johnson, and Tay. Your generosity makes this channel what it is, so thank you. And if you like this episode, you'll like the one from last Wednesday, in which I lay out the ways the Democrats should be fighting back in Congress. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
This is ours to lose. Losing Bravo. Securing Alpha. So, Charlie. Bravo lost.
If you haven't seen this video. Oh, dude, there's people that haven't seen it. Dope. Yes, I love showing people this video. It's such a good video. It's like, it is the explanation, I think, for why the Democrats have become so despised by their voters and why Republicans have continued to grow in power.
Whatever they're hiding.
Morning and night, that'll show him.
Say, for the sake of argument, you're a Democratic president finishing out your last year in office. There's not a lot you're expected to do as a lame duck except endorse a Democrat for the upcoming election. But then, early in the year, something unexpected happens. A Supreme Court justice dies suddenly in his sleep. Vacancies in the Supreme Court are infrequent, as it's a lifetime appointment, so death and the occasional resignation are the only causes of an empty seat. And when it happens, it's the president's job to get the seat filled. So you set about the task of picking a successor, probably the last major decision you will make as president, when the Republican Senate tells you, yeah, we're not going to confirm anyone you nominate. And you say, well, if you think you've got the votes, you can reject my nominee and I'll pick someone else. And they say, oh no, we're not going to vote against your nominee. We're not going to hold a vote. What are you talking about? I haven't even nominated someone yet. We're not going to convene a vote on anyone you nominate. But that's your job. I make a nomination, the Senate holds a vote, and democracy decides who sits on the bench. Well, that's not what we're going to do. You're a lame duck. The next president will decide who sits on the Supreme Court. That's not how this works. That's not how we've ever done things. Certainly not when your party's had a lame duck in office. Well, it's what we're going to do. And you say, that's not what the Constitution says. And they say, the Constitution does not explicitly say we can't.
Trump talking about the third term. I'm trying to see if I can find the... Here it is.
I've raised a lot of money for the next race that I assume I can't use for myself, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't know. I think I'm not allowed to run again. I'm not sure. Am I allowed to run again, Mike? I better not get you involved in that argument. I've raised a lot.
Because technically the Constitution doesn't explicitly say whether it's about 3 consecutive terms. Ha 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 ha.
Your wife has a saying for when Republicans act up. They go low, we go high. So in considering your current predicament, you try to think of what taking the high road might look like. The Republicans have always accused you of being too far left, so after some deliberation, you select a middle-of-the-road, utterly uncontroversial judge, the kind of candidate a functioning Senate should have no trouble confirming. You make a display of embracing the spirit of compromise in the hopes they'll change their tune, or at the very least be shamed into convening a vote rather than admitting this had nothing to do with the timing or the nominee and was just about refusing to collaborate with a liberal. In response, the Republicans announced that not only will they still not convene a vote, some say that should a Democrat win the election, and they don't even know who the candidate is yet, they will hold the seat vacant for however long it takes to get a Republican in the White House. You didn't call their bluff. They are all too happy to admit that this is absolutely about dicking over liberals and guaranteeing as many conservatives as possible in the...
No, it only says you can't be elected twice in a maximum of 10 years, not even a debate. It's clear you can only be... It's clear as you can be with the English language. So what you're saying is he can just run again with J.D. Vance as president, and then J.D. Vance steps down immediately, is what you're saying. So we get to have a third term. Yeah, now you're talking. Yeah. Now we're talking. Now we're talking.
The Supreme Court. There is no official policy for what to do if one party simply refuses to do its job. But there is a legal argument that if the Senate refuses to vote on your nominee, they are,
it feels like QA testing for a game,
in effect, giving you permission to appoint a judge without their approval. Link in the down there part. This is technically a little...
Sorry. Someone just linked this way. Let me just make sure. Proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States to provide that no person shall be elected to the office of president more than 3 times. This is good.
Extra constitutional, but it is the law in many similar scenarios, and certainly if they're going to break the rules, you're within your rights to bend them. But they go low, we go high. How can you criticize them for going outside the Constitution if you're going to do it yourself? So being the grown-up, you grit your teeth and do nothing. Seemingly there's nothing to do but publicly shame them, keeping a running tally of how many days your nomination has sat on senators' desks without a vote. You can play this as keeping your integrity, the Democrats seizing the moral high ground. But in response, the Republicans seize the Supreme Court. Their guy wins the election, you finish out your term, and Republicans will put one of their own on the bench. And just before you leave off,
try 3. And then when we suggest, hey, Democrats, maybe you guys should stack the court, well, we can't do that. That would be wrong. That would be wrong. We can't do that. We can never stoop to their level. Name of the video, alt-right playbook, you go high, we go low.
Office, and the new guy is inaugurated, and your nomination expires after 293 days without a vote, nearly 3 times the previous record. A Republican senator predicts that, under the new administration, the Democrats, the minority party in the House, Senate, and now Supreme Court, will be the biggest obstructionists history has ever seen. Think of the position this puts Democratic senators into. They have been preemptively denigrated for the exact behaviors Republicans have relied on for the last 8 years. After 2 terms of misuse, every means of obstructing an unfit executive branch.
Yeah, the Dems get to win on moral high ground, and we all lose our rights. Excellent. Love that trade-off.
Branch, from filibustering bills to shutting down the government rather than approve a budget proposal, has just been defined as going low. Worse, in the event of a Supreme Court appointment being literally stolen by the opposing party, it might be defensible to not convene a vote on whomever that party nominates, except that's exactly the tactic Democrats have spent 10 months condemning. If everything that might restore democratic norms is tainted by the Republicans who violated those norms in the first place, then the only honorable move left is compliance. Give Republicans whatever they want, confirm their judge as quickly and smoothly as possible, treat the situation like it's fair, because that's what they should have done when it actually was. This is somehow going high. And that comment from the Republican senator belies the truth. They know what they're doing, and they're not ashamed. They know Democrats aren't obstructionists. They're counting on it. When one party can be relied on to do the exact opposite of your worst behavior, good strategy is to do to them as destructively as possible whatever you don't want them to do to you. The new Republican norm is you go high, we go low. Now, this is a long-standing Republican thing, and we'll talk about how the alt-right comes into it by and by. And though it's effective, it's not sophisticated. I mean, I just got finished with my intro and I'm already out of things to say about it. So let's turn the camera around and ask not why the technique is popular, but why Democrats keep falling for it. On the face of it, it would appear Democrats are a lot more concerned with being called hypocrites than Republicans are, which would seem a very solvable problem. Republicans are going to yell so much for the tolerant left, no matter what form our opposition takes, so ignore them. But clearly it's not that simple, or we wouldn't be having this problem. Republicans are striking at something more fundamental to American liberalism that makes these charges of hypocrisy hard to ignore. So, what's wrong with liberals? The modern American Democrat is in an unenviable position. You need two things to win an election: votes and funding. And there are a number of things that voters care passionately about and that they have no hope of ever getting from Republicans. But unfortunately for Democrats, they are the exact things big-ticket donors despise, which is why Democrats in very secure districts who tend to run unopposed are the ones most willing to talk about them. The left is, in fact, a very heterogeneous group with a mountain of conflicting interests and decades of infighting. So it's very hard to appeal to all of them and wealthy donors. Republicans don't have this problem, or at least they don't have it as bad. Despite many, in some ways, even more passionate and fundamental differences, conservatives value loyalty and in-group cohesion. And this keeps them coming together every 4 years in a
I mean, half the people who are in the Trump camp don't even like Trump or what he stands for. Like, Tucker Carlson has text messages that were found in, I think it was because of a subpoena in court, that he doesn't like Trump. And he was literally he literally was texting his homies saying, dude, I cannot wait for Trump to not be in office anymore. The content is so boring. I hate covering it. The React content sucks when he's in office. You think Ben Shapiro, Mr. Wet-ass Keyword, likes Trump? You know, the guy hiring prostitutes? You know, the guy who can't read a fucking single verse in a Bible? Who was holding the Bible upside down? Who literally said, what's it called? What is Tuck the Cuck about? Trump is content king. Well, not for Fox, right? Because for Fox, they need Dems in power so they can make fun of the Dems, right? 2 Corinthians. Tucker was subpoenaed. It was during the Dominion lawsuit, where Fox News was alleging, Tucker Carlson being the primary face at the time, that Dominion was engaging in voter fraud. And Dominion sued and they won for, was it millions, billions of dollars? When Trump was asked, name your favorite verse, name your favorite Bible verse, he literally said, it's hard to pick, I love all of it. It's every verse. I love all of it. I really like all of it. Like, these fucking JD Vance went on Twitter to call Trump Hitler, and suddenly he's the biggest Trump fan on the planet. Every Christian has a favorite verse coming from someone who used to go to church. Yeah, it's if you say the Bible is your favorite book, but you can't pick a verse, it's a really personal question, okay? My favorite part was when the big guy says, you're a wizard, Jesus. No, he says, you're a prophet, Jesus, okay? Get it right. Fake fan, fake Bible fan, boo. Anyways, TLDR, they will back whoever is in power. Whoever has the most traction will get general Republican support, even when it's fucking Trump.
Surprisingly unified voting bloc. It also helps that they fucking hate us, and most would sooner vote for a Republican they despise than any kind of Democrat. And lucky for them, the things conservative voters want are much more aligned with corporate interests. So building a coalition on the left is a lot of work. And faced with this challenge, there is a liberal tendency to turn away from policy and focus instead on process. Generally uncontroversial things like bipartisanship, compromise, decorum. And fair enough, the absence of these things in Washington over the years is certainly something everyone left of center is sick of, but they're not things Democrats can make happen all by themselves. And more to the point, none of them are results. They're means. Like, a willingness to compromise is not a position, and when you over-focus on how you should go about things and not what things you should go about, it fosters a certain philosophy about government that is both highly flawed and highly exploitable. The valuing of means at the expense of ends. Most people would say that the ends justify the means is a crap moral philosophy. Democrats would agree, but liberals often overcorrect to the point where thinking about the ends at all is thought of as, in a vague, reflexive kind of way, innately immoral. There's a very Enlightenment way of thinking that implies that with the right means, the ends take care of themselves, and immoral behavior becomes functionally impossible. I want to stress that claiming political group A adheres to philosophy X is always reductive. Human beings hold many patterns of thought simultaneously and slip between them depending on context. This is less the key to understanding liberals and more one pattern of thinking liberals often slip into. But this idea of the